Hello, and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to talk to everyday superheroes helping nonprofits using technology. Today, I'm joined by guest David Phu. David, welcome to the show.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me.
So, for listeners who are hearing you for the first time, could you share a bit about what you are or what you do and what services you provide?
Yeah, I mainly it's just nonprofit video marketing. So anything from production to training. Although this year we've had a full shift because of the pandemic to training, and we're finding that it's going so well, teaching and equipping the nonprofit to do everything themselves in-house, that we're thinking of just keeping it that way. And honestly, it's just more fun, and the benefit of our style of teaching simple, cheap, homemade video marketing is that it gets you up and running faster and attract more awareness and visibility on the cheap.
I'm looking forward to diving deeper into this, but before we get there, I was wanting to know, how did you get started working with nonprofits?
Well, it's actually started as volunteering for day camp right out of or during college, and at the time I didn't know what nonprofits even were. I just knew that I could volunteer and be hanging out with kids and playing sports and stuff. But it really that was maybe just over 20 years ago, and I think, having worked in trying out different roles in nonprofits, something about this sector just kind of stuck with me, or I couldn't leave. And I don't mean it in kind of like a hostage or prisoner way. I mean like something keeps drawing me back, and I've stuck with it. I've tried a couple times to leave, but I think it's something about it tends to draw a caretaker or empathetic type of person. And it just, I can't articulate it any better. It just really keeps me, and I don't want to leave.
Yeah, this is not the first time I've heard this. There seems to be some kind of gravitational pull that once you find yourself within that nonprofit space, you don't want to leave. There's something rewarding that goes above and beyond just providing a basic service. There's some kind of, I don't know if it's quite a community, but a connection, I'll use that word, within some of the clients that I've had, and I'm sure you've had as well, where it's just like you're so rewarded by the whole experience that you just want to keep on doing that over and over again.
Yeah, I've heard it. I mean, I'm hearing it from you right now, and I've heard it from my own peers. And I mean, that's another thing that sort of unifies us. We can all relate to that.
So up until recently, you said you've been focusing on video marketing. Why video marketing as opposed to any other type of marketing?
Well, okay. So Alex, the one thing I find kind of hard to admit is that I don't particularly have a passion for video. It's just that I have a passion for communication as a specialty. So I love communication theory, media theory. I love topics about digital and media literacy, and I found that working with nonprofits to get their message out is the root, is the core thing for me. And so I chose video because that's something artistically that I've always been doing on the side. And so why not mix them both? And currently, with manufacturers of devices are prioritizing video. Google owns YouTube and is prioritizing video search. And we're seeing a demand and an interest in authentic, bringing business and nonprofits authentic selves digitally or online. So it seems to be like kind of an overlap of film and video media. So it seemed like a good opportunity to jump on that. And it really addresses a lot of my values, which is use the technology you have and be your honest self with imperfections and all, and I think the ability to raise awareness with that. So that's why I choose video marketing.
Yeah, I've also noticed that a more genuine experience, a more authentic experience has been a priority in the last couple of years. And it doesn't need to be perfect. I mean, even in this podcast, just due to certain circumstances, you need to be outside and you can hear the birds chirping, which I find is lovely, but it could be distracting for some audience members, but your message is much more important than the birds in the background kind of thing. So, yeah.
Alex,
yeah.
I just finished recording a podcast episode where I had the windows open and the birds chirping, and it changed the recording experience. And I think I just want to keep it that way. I like the birds in the background.
There's something to be said about that. I mean, it's more philosophical than anything else, but there's something very natural about it that it's okay, again, not to be perfect or to have to edit everything out. And yeah, let's let's put a pin in that one, because it'll be a digression completely into our topic here. But in talking about communication in general, so that's great. I love the idea of obviously video. You have video and audio. People get a chance to see you not only speak and how you speak and how you present yourself, kind of like a podcast that we're doing here, but also the hand gestures you might have, what you look like, how you present yourself, your background. So background meaning your actual background in your video. So have you noticed it just in general to be much more of a amplified experience using video, or do you sometimes use audio as well? Like where do you see the main advantages to video over anything else?
Well, every format has its own sort of its own strength or its own superpower. And with video in particular, it's what I say is the closest you'll get from a full human interaction when you're online. And what that means is you get, like as you mentioned, you get body language, hand gestures, facial expressions, which in communication, I forget the actual number, but it's a significant portion of communication is done through body language. So it kind of doesn't matter how great your writing or your speaking is, but it's as high as 70 or 80% or something like that, where your body does the rest of it. So it can clarify, it can reinforce, it can build credibility and trust by adding body language. So one example I have of where it really amplifies a message is a current client went from no videos to suddenly 4 or 5 videos per month. And the difference is if you looked at their online presence, so their social media, their website, and their emails even, where they went from informational, still very warm, very, very clear, very informational collateral. But now with the addition of videos in their socials, on their website, in their emails, they just, it was like a black and white. It was like a light switch. They went from informational to, oh, there's actual people working here of all kinds of skin colors, of all kinds of ages, with one is kind of a slow talker and one is kind of a fast talker. Suddenly we have real people here. And that makes a big difference. It's a pretty heartwarming and surprising difference when you witness it.
Moving then from informational, maybe content only, copy to video, like you said, you get a much better feel for actual people. When you, and this is maybe something I might want to say for later in the conversation, but I'll bring it up now. Once a video has been produced, or let's say in this example of this organization that has now 4 or 5 videos per month, what kind of engagement increase have you seen or have they received as a result of this? Like, what are the outcomes, the positive outcomes of doing video as opposed to just sticking with traditional copy?
This is where the answer gets a little bit complicated, so I'll try to keep it short. There's 2 parts to this. One is positive outcomes depends entirely on what the communication goals are for that organization. And those goals are usually quite different from one organization to the next. And so For this particular organization, what they were looking for was an increase in website visits, because the website is the core of everything that they do. They're a advocacy and awareness organization. And so what they've been seeing is that for every time they post a video, they were getting a spike in website visits, like a correlation. And during a campaign, that was approximately, I think it was something like 15 or 20% more website visits than the campaign performance from last year. And so that was the goal that we were presented with, and that was the goal that we had to address. And the second part to that is trying to stay focused on what you're measuring. And so across the board, it seems that when we're measuring things like video, we often rely on the free stuff like Facebook, whatever they call it, analytics, metrics, YouTube, counting the views and likes. And that stuff, I think, that stuff can be kind of distracting, because a view and a like is the equivalent of measuring whether a fish sniffed at your line, at your bait. But what we really want to know is if people took an action, or if people remember you or mention you or talk about you. So what we do is we try to measure going backwards. So any interaction you have with anybody coming through your organization, we try to be detectives and find out their sort of journey to get to you. And when they mention video, that's the measurement that counts. And so that's what we've been doing with clients so far, is kind of implementing a measuring system that moves backwards instead of relying on just the free stuff.
Okay, so it sounds like it's not just a service you provide where you produce a video, you fire it off to them and then forget. You actually have additional services or additional help to be able to figure out the engagement of that video, whether it works better or not, if there's any changes to make, I guess, as well. Like, what other augmented services can you offer, or do you offer, in addition to just the pure, here is the video, have fun?
So for us, that follow-up, that troubleshooting, that measuring, that pivoting, that's all, I don't even consider it augmented or add-on services. That is the service. I always say that completing a video at all is probably only 5 or 10% of the work. It's a fraction. It's just the beginning. The work is actually in the posting, distributing, choosing your channels, maybe even going back and rewriting titles, rewriting descriptions, adding new tags. I made this decision a couple of years ago that I refused to be in a creative industry like video and just hand off the work and hope for the best. In a sense, for me, if the organization doesn't have a way or a method or a plan to distribute it, then it's the equivalent of throwing it in the closet and just hoping for the best. To me, that feels a bit like robbery. So, yeah, we provide all the follow-up stuff, which is actually most of the work.
And how do you actually measure video engagement? Aside from seeing, for example, that a video was posted on a certain social media platform, and then the website then gets an additional 10%, 20% increase in visits, are there any other types of measurement tools or apps or metrics that you take and provide?
This is where I wish I had, I hate this word, turnkey solution. It's pretty custom for each client. And right now we only work with small clients. But, I'll give 2 examples. One, it could be as simple as a small spreadsheet where we have a few columns where all staff are equipped and must, like it is part of their work now, to ask and to really listen. Whether you're a counselor, whether you're front desk, whether you're an executive, going to meetings, and to really listen. Every time you interact with somebody, ask, how do they know about you? Why do they interact with you? And you can fold that stuff into conversations, and then come back and jot down a few notes. It should only take 30 seconds. And any mention, and actually this doesn't apply to just video, any mention of any format and any medium, you need to take notes. And then every month or every quarter or every year, whatever it is you choose, whatever works for you, you should be assessing that media and those channels to see where you can repeat. Is there some sort of trend of a particular series of videos or series of webinars or series of podcasts that people are mentioning more? And what type of action are they taking? And so this is what I mean by kind of going backwards. The other example, besides just having a simple spreadsheet, is you'll have to put together kind of like a kind of round up what social media, and that includes YouTube or any external video player or video host that you're using, which metrics matter. And like I said before, it depends which organization you are and what your goals are. But for some organizations, like let's say you're a referral-based agency. So you are working in refugee and settlement, and you don't generally have a big online presence, but you're referral-based. So you have lots of partnerships across the country, and other agencies refer you. So we might identify from the very beginning that you're heavily referral-based. And so as a referral agency, your strength isn't in branding and promotion. Your strength is in partner engagement. How can I equip partners with more content? That content that they'll show each other, content that they'll put in their newsletters, content that they'll show their students and members. And so if you're using something like Vimeo or Wistia, they have great tools for tracking the source of that video. Did somebody click from LinkedIn? Did somebody click from a random search from Google? Did they click from an email newsletter? And so when we're focused on this one strategy, which is referral based, that's one way of measuring it, is the sources of clicks. Oh, now, would you mind if I gave one more example?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so a third example would be if you were, we're going to get away completely from branding and promotion and talk about sort of more of an internal use of video, which is if you're working in development, you spend a lot of time around proposals, your videos, we might know from the beginning that what we're trying to establish is a video marketing strategy that's really private, really internal. And so you might start working on something like Loom, which is a great screen recording video app, or Wistia, which is a great place for hosting and measuring more private videos. YouTube and Vimeo are capable of these things. But let's pretend you are a fundraiser and you've set out a proposal for maybe a year-end push, and you have a PDF and you record yourself walking through the PDF. And so the first thing you're doing is you're experimenting and attempting to stand out with video. And then the next thing you're doing is checking whether they watched the video, how long they watched the video, and this is the best part, which sections of the video did they watch? Did they skip? Did they watch only up until halfway? Did they watch the whole thing? And even more interesting is, did they repeat certain sections? So if you know that they repeated, let's say, that section where you talked about your, budget, you've tracked that. Now you know maybe you should follow up and go, hey, do you have any questions about the budget? And so now we're also tracking sort of movements, which seems a bit creepy. I don't know where the ethical line is to draw there, but that's just another example of being really hyper focused on one or two measurements using video.
Especially if a certain segment is repeated multiple times, and especially internally as well, it may be an indicator that there needs to be another follow-up video, specifically, expanding that one particular topic. That could be interesting as well. So that's great to see it. Not only do you provide videos and produce videos that are meant to be shown externally, but also internally, as well as a type of training mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier that turnkey, it seemed like to be a dirty word. I would say that turnkey is actually pretty good. What I think you were trying to mention was cookie cutter, in that the service you provided shouldn't be cookie cutter. They should be tailored to the client that you're using, but it should be definitely turnkey or white gloves, because it's really a high-end service. And the turnkey in the sense that you come in and you really help them from start to finish. And by the time you finish, like they don't need to do much on their own without your help, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm always open to being corrected. It may be that I have a misunderstanding of the word, but it's a very personal thing where I feel like the word turnkey I often associate with kind of quick, empty promises. But what you're describing to me sounds wonderful. So yeah, I'm open to being. I'm persuaded.
Another topic you talked about was a bit about polling, but I was curious to know, like, in terms of knowing what kind of video would resonate best with an audience. Do you work with any kind of focus groups or any kind of polling to be able to figure out for your own education to say, okay, these days, for example, we talked about that people today prefer a more authentic, more genuine experience. Is that something you just kind of noticed over time versus you actually have your own kind of research data to support that?
I don't work with anybody that does that. It's more of a continual upkeep on sort of market reports and communication research. And so, for example, I don't remember the person's name, but a product manager at YouTube recently spoke at a conference about how this might be biased on YouTube's part, but that the authenticity, there are certain cues for authenticity, and those types of videos tend to be winning all the eyeballs. You'll have to forgive me. I'm not good at memorizing sources, but there's a study that was done about volunteer recruitment and their impression of different types of websites they were shown. And one type of website was super polished, and another type of website was a little bit more grassroots and scrappy. They noticed that something about the grassroots website offered a little bit more credibility, especially for something nonprofit. Now, I'm not going to say it had what result it had on recruitment, but there was a sort of a qualitative observation about the sense of credibility and expectations from nonprofits. Another example would be that Coachella Festival?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so every year I think that there tends to be a lot of sponsorship and partnership with influencers. And this year there was a massive drop in inviting Instagram influencers and more in TikTok influencers. And there seems to be some kind of correlation with influencers being less polished. So we're kind of like, I forget what the word is, being detectives and sort of deducing where things are going online. So it's just kind of a mix of communication research, cultural research, and market reports.
And speaking of the polishedness, I don't know if that's an actual word, but the grassroots versus the more polished website, I think it's just more anecdotal as far as on my side. It speaks to the audience. The nonprofits in general are not usually tech heavy. they're not polished themselves for the most part. That's in terms of comparing it to some other for-profit organizations. So if a nonprofit or people who are looking for nonprofits go to a website that's a bit more grassroots, it just, I think, resonates more than something that's super slick and with animations everywhere. It might not allow them to connect as well. And it's just, again, my own 2 cents, but I think that there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a complex topic, because the study did try to address this, but who is visiting the page? They were just focusing on volunteer recruitment, but they said there's more research to be done about donors, and then what level of donors, and then job applicants, and then the actual audience that's being served. I mean, they all come with their own expectations, and that's difficult.
You mentioned earlier some of the advantages of choosing video marketing over other kinds of marketing options. Are there any disadvantages to a video marketing tool?
Yeah, this is a discussion I like to have with potential clients. Sometimes we find that video won't be helpful, and often it has to do with a capacity issue. So they might not have the time, and they might be. I think that the person who should not approach video is, or the organization that should not approach video is the one who's looking for a magic solution to their marketing and their raising awareness and their fundraising, but they just don't have the time. They don't have the time to adopt the new technology, or more importantly, they might have the inspiration and energy to start it, but they won't have the energy to maintain it, to follow it, to track it. It's an entirely new skill, and the organization might not have a different type of capacity, which is just the capacity to speak, the capacity to put yourself forward, to get on camera, or to even speak in audio. And another thing that I can think of would be, you just might not be the organization that needs to even put for a more human digital step forward. You might be one of those organizations that works very privately. I think foundations are like that. I think that some organizations work in domestic violence, and you want to sort of show that you have a level of respect and privacy. So, yeah, that might be. But that tends to be the organizations I say it's okay to stay away from video. There's so many other ways to do things, like podcasts, for example.
You mentioned, though, training. Is it something that you would provide a nonprofit who is looking to do video, may not have the in-house experience just yet, is interested in learning, wants to be part of that new movement? I'm not sure it's a new movement, but wants to move in this new direction, let's say. Doesn't have quite the skill set today, but wants to grow. Do you provide any kind of training to help them along that path?
Yeah. So far with the training, there's kind of a long discussion before working with a client, and that's to sort of investigate and find out how they work internally, and just have that honest conversation and find the truth about whether they can take this on. Once all the signs point to we can handle this and we're interested and where we have the energy and motivation, I stick with them for usually 8 weeks, and with a couple follow-ups after that. And the systems that are in place are as simple as possible, and they're able to keep up.
You also mentioned that you work typically with small nonprofits. Any particular reason why smaller versus the larger ones?
Mainly my own capacity, Alex. I find that between video production and training over the past couple of years, I've noticed that with larger nonprofits, and I admit it could be my own fault, it's hard to stay top of mind with and competing with thousands of their internal priorities. And so for some reason, even though the small nonprofits have 1,000 priorities or more, the expense or the investment seems to make it that they want to get something out of it. There's more at stake. Do you know what I mean? So, and I find that with a smaller team or with a smaller group of people, me or the project seems to stay top of mind, and there's an excitement to get on phone calls every week. Yeah, I don't know. That's the best way I can describe it. That our work seems to stay top of mind on a smaller team, and that's good for me, so that I can keep them. So that we can actually accomplish the project instead of get it lost in the mix.
That makes sense. So who decides then the video script? Like, or maybe even before we get to that question, more, let's say a nonprofit identifies in some way that they are considering working with and getting a video produced. How does a typical engagement work with you? And how do people find out or discover that they need a video, or they're thinking about getting a video? And then how do you guide them along the overall high level process of, deciding the script, deciding the music or any kind of video elements, and so on?
We provide two services. One is the video production, and the other is the video marketing training. But what both services have in common is, once they decide that they want to have video in the organization, it always starts with a couple of sessions that take a couple of hours each. So they're given homework before coming to this phone call, and that homework is to gather as much information as possible about their communication channels, what's going right, what's going wrong, what they wish for it, and tell me about their audience, and tell me about their audience segments, and tell me about their story, their values, their mission. Just gather all of that sort of communication related stuff. And then we sit down for these sessions, like I said, which are 2-hour sessions. And what happens is we kind of just make a mess and go through it and try to look for those opportunities where video could really enhance something, or where video can really address a specific thing that organization is trying to achieve. So that's the first step.
And then following that?
So after we have mapped all of that stuff out, I propose sort of an order of things, or a plan, or a proposal for which videos to make and how we can best position them. And so for every organization, that's different. And often it could be a 30-second video. It could be a 5-minute video. We just don't know, unless it depends on the organization. And then we kind of go back and forth to figure out what would suit the organization. And then we get into pre-production. So that would be the third thing. We start to think about what we want to say and who we want to address. But often, I think this is one of the funnest parts about working with me, is that we don't rely on a script and we don't rely on a storyboard. We rely on a very focused series of questions. And then we record ourselves doing these interviews or asking each other these questions, because I find that when the person speaking is answering questions and kind of thinking, and sometimes looking at their notes, there seems to be something really honest and authentic about it. And that's what we're trying to achieve. And so that's how the recording process goes. It's often over Zoom, because of the pandemic, it's mostly over Zoom. But sometimes we'll do something where I'll teach them how to set up their smartphone to film themselves, and then they can send that footage over to me to edit. But before the pandemic, we were filming in person. But anyway, that's part of the production process. Is we can figure it out. We can do almost anything because of the technology we have.
I know that stories are typically the typical format for general conversations. People relate well to stories. I imagine there's some times when stories are not the best approach. Any insight on that? When should you have a story? When does it not matter if you have a story? I guess for training internally, you don't need to have a story. It's more about being informational. But is there any other external type of videos where a story would not be a good fit or would be a great fit?
This is a kind of a contentious topic because on my LinkedIn, I tend to debate the merits of story and the use of it. And so my position is that story on its own as a concept. So tell your audience, the problem, and then hint at the solution, and then give a bit of background story, and then have a twist, and then offer the big reveal at the end. How do I put this? Okay, so on one hand, you have story just literally on its own as a structure. We should make a video that tells the story. Done. And then there's sort of this more holistic approach where we understand that visitors and viewers come with their own stories and we have to fill in the gaps. So story always seems to exist, but you have to decide in which case do I literally do like a full narrative story, and in which case am I a gap filler? And that gap filler, in other words, is just straight information. And so I'm going to use an example of like an app company where one landing page has a video that just goes straight to a product demo, and that product demo seems to be kind of hovering around the phase where the buyer is ready to at least test it or get a trial or purchase it. And that's part of their journey, part of their story is that they had a problem in their life and they were looking for solutions, and now they've finally landed. They're finally ready to do a product demo, and they want to click on your video. And that video on its own, if I were working with the client, would appear to be just straight, clear information with no story. But what we've determined is that to get there, a viewer had to go through their own story.
What do you mean by bring their own story as a listener?
I think that one thing we don't often hear about in when people recommend storytelling is that audience members, so those could be your clients, your customers, your students, they come to your organization with their own problems in life. And problems are the root of stories. So I need to find a family dentist. This is the beginning of a story. I need to get help with I don't have enough money for food for the next 2 weeks. That's the beginning. That's a problem that makes the foundation of that person's story, that chapter in their life at that moment. And so there seems to be, in my opinion, there's no use going to a website, clicking on videos that all sort of are based on the structure of a story. You or whoever is in need, who needs help, who has the problem, they come to your website looking for the answer to their problem. So we don't have to make videos that that introduce a problem and then introduce a solution. Sometimes we just have to show up with the solution. And that solution is just a straight up answer. It's just boring information. But it's boring to us because it's just straight facts. But it's not boring to the person looking for help. It's probably the best thing they've heard all day. And now you're presenting them the solution part of their story.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Taking a step back at a higher level as well, I'm curious to know, are there any technologies or a CRM, let's say, because, I love talking about CRM, any kind of information or technologies that nonprofits have or use that is in your advantage in the sense that you're able to produce better videos or more accurate videos or more informational videos, greater content if they have certain apps already or certain CRMs already?
So, Alex, I don't have very much experience with CRMs because my clients tend not to either maintain a very good CRM process or generally feel ready for adopting a CRM. But the only time I've experienced where it could really help with video is the ability to. I talked earlier about listening and asking your clients and your participants and your members about how they came to find you, and taking those notes to a spreadsheet. Well, if there's a CRM system in place, that CRM is the spreadsheet. It's the place to put these notes and possibly tags and sort of look at that data over time. And so this is where I'd like to ask you, what would you recommend for that kind of implementation that I'm talking about?
I think the key element is knowing your audience, knowing who you want to engage with. So if your video is for your donors, or maybe your mid-level donors, knowing who they are, what's important to them, having that access or having access to that information within your CRM can be very beneficial. If you're trying to reach an audience you don't even know of, like you have to rely on outside information or focus groups, like I mentioned, or other sources to be able to target what you're trying or who you're trying to reach, it gets more complicated. So trying to keep everything, at least the immediate audience that you're trying to reach, the ones that you're connected with and want to expand towards, having a CRM and a good one, and up-to-date one is, I can only see advantages.
Are you at Salesforce? So I've never used it. Is there a way to sort of know which videos certain people watched or interacted with?
I don't know, actually. No. It would be interesting to know. And just, I don't know if I ever mentioned this before, but I'm happy to explain. So I don't technically work for Salesforce. Salesforce as a company only, or usually only, they've been changing their kind of business model recently, but they typically just sell you the Salesforce platform, the CRM. And then they work with partners like myself to implement that platform for a particular organization, like a nonprofit. So
okay.
There's a slight distinction there, and sometimes it's a bit different. Nonprofits or different CRMs rather have different business models, but that's Salesforce's.
I see.
So what does the future look like for you? Where would you like to see yourself in the next couple of years?
Well, at the moment, I'm very happy doing what I'm doing, and I'm only doing it part-time because I'm the majority of my time I'm watching my toddlers. But as soon as they are old enough to go to school and do more activities outside of the home, I'd like to just grow this and do this full-time. I'm currently the happiest I've ever been because of training. I think there's just an environment I absolutely love being in, and the feeling of equipping people instead of me just doing the labor and then handing it off. It just feels just so much better. So I don't think I'm asking for much more over the next 2 years, except to just keep doing this at maybe double or triple the pace.
Awesome. So for those who would like to reach out to you to get more information about you and your services, how can people find you online?
The number one place I am hanging out right now is on LinkedIn, and you can find me, David Phu, spelled Phu. And then the other place you can find me is my website, nonprofitvideocomms.ca, where there's sort of 3 categories: free ways to teach yourself video marketing, and then some upcoming courses, and then one-on-one training where you just get in touch with me and see if that is something you'd be interested in.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
All right, folks, that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me again next time for Agents of Nonprofit.